Hello and welcome to Beer and Gear. Doc Nasty coming at you. Got my protective gear on here because safety comes first, always. Don't want to lose my eyeballs. They're sort of important. So tonight this is a simple mod that I did to my graphics card on my PC. My PC down here in the shop. This thing was dead for a long time, a few years actually. I finally got it up and running again. I'm going to go through that later in another episode, but here what I did was I had my graphics card and I was taking some temperature readings using a non-contact thermometer. One like this here, actually this exact one is what I used. So, you know, it has its own internal cooling system, but it was still running pretty hot and I wanted it to be cooler because I wasn't happy with that. So what I did was I took an old CPU cooling fan off a Dinosaur PC that I had and I secured it to the top of my graphics card, so it has an inner cooling system and an outer cooling system now, and also provides some additional airflow for my tower. So we're going to be running through that now. It's pretty simple, use some very basic tools, and it took me about 10 minutes from start to finish, and that includes shooting it. So here we go. This is Lex, by the way. It's my shop cat. Figured I needed a cat down here because, you know, do stuff on the internet's full of cats. I need a cat in my shop. So she was a stray and I started feeding her. She hung around, and when it started getting cold outside I brought her in, took her to the vet, got her all checked out, got her vaccinated, and she's good to go now. She's a good kitty. She's content with anything, you know. You can hold her, you put her anywhere, she stays there. She's just happy to have food. So, this is Lex, the shop cat. Wanna say hi to the internet? Hi, internet. Alright, so here's my GPU. This is an ATX or a ATI Radeon graphics card. And as you can see, it had this little bracket here, this X-shaped bracket. Not exactly a heat sink. I think it's just to make sure that the GPU underneath here fits firmly onto that heat sink underneath. So if I go ahead and pop this off here, those 4 screws holding that bracket on were the only thing securing this circuit board to the bottom part. And it has, as you can see, a heat sink here. There's the GPU. It's got that thermal paste on there. And it has an internal cooling system. You can see the strips of the heat sink in there, and then this sort of an induction fan, which is powered internally by the circuit board. It sucks air in and blasts it through this heat sink, but it was still pretty hot on top. I took a digital non-contact thermometer. It was giving me about 45 degrees centigrade, so I want to put another cooling fan up here. So I've got my micro drill index here, and I happen to work in the medical field, believe it or not. I work in an OR, as crazy and drunk as I am. I'm not drunk at work though, but got these little sharps. You can keep track of your needles and blades and whatnot, and they're magnetic, so if they don't get used and they're going to be thrown away, I save these because they're great for holding small screws and components. They're magnetic, you see. Flip it upside down, your screws stay in there. And these are a bunch of old screws that I salvaged, so from taking apart other components. So I found 2 here that I want to use, and these are the same thread, what do you call it? Have the same thread that these small screws that originally held the bracket on did. And they also had these 4 springs with them, so take care if you're doing this, take extreme care not to lose any of this stuff because it's very tiny and you need it. So over here I've got this old cooling fan off of the CPU heatsink of an old PC. This is an old Dinosaur HP Pavilion. I pretty much scrapped it and parted it out and used some things for some other projects, but still had the cooling fan in there, and I thought I'd make a nice top, you know, additional cooling fan for this. So I've got that L bracket, or not the L bracket, the X bracket in here, and this is all makeshift. What I did was I took some some stock angle aluminum that I had laying around, and I put it across the top and the bottom of this fan that I've got secured in this vise, and I put that bracket on top of here because the holes don't exactly line up. They're very close, but they're not exact, and I need them to line up if I want to secure it to my graphics card. So I just took a C-clamp, small C-clamp, not too tight because I don't want to distort the components, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a very small pilot hole. This is the smallest drill bit I have, and I'm going to try to center it in this hole here. If you can see, drill a small pilot hole as a guide so that I can maintain control of it. And then this is about, it's slightly less than the actual diameter of the holes in the bracket, this drill bit. I've gauged it up using my dial caliper here. So this is going to be my final drill, but first I'm going to drill this small pilot hole, so bear with me and I'll be back in a sec. So minor adjustment, I had to change some things because everything was sliding around on me. I went ahead and got rid of those angle aluminum pieces I had, and I just used 2 small C-clamps to hold this down directly to the fan, and I used these holes that were already in here as a drill guide. Now I ended up not drilling a pilot hole because the original holes in the fan were so close that I couldn't actually get it. I mean, I couldn't actually drill the pilot hole because things wanted to slide around on me, so I just drilled my my finished hole using this as a drill guide, and I kind of had to hold it down with my hand to stabilize it further as I was drilling because this is a very small component. You know, this material wants to warp if you put too much pressure on it, so it was just very delicate. So now I'm going to try it out and see how it fits. Alright, so I'm back here with my GPU. I've got this X bracket on here, how it originally was, and between the bracket and the board there's some little springs, I guess, to prevent too much force as you tighten the screws down. So I've got 2 of them seated, as you can see, and I've left the other 2 open because, as it turns out, I only had 2 of these screws, these long ones that I was able to find from my scrap pile. So I've drilled out 2 holes, basically just extended the holes that were already in there, and I cleaned them out. So now the idea is I'm going to use 2 screws to secure this fan to the board, so that this fan is going to blow air down and hopefully cool it further than the internal cooling system does, because it's still pretty hot. So I've got these springs underneath here. I don't know if you can see it. My camera doesn't like to get up too close. It gets all blurry. So now I'm going to try and seat these in here, and I'll be back with you in a second. Alright, success. I've got the fan securely mounted on the graphics card, and I got this wire coming off of it, so now the only thing left to do is fire it up and see how she handles. Alright, now it is a tight fit. I had to remove my network card here just so I could maneuver this in here because this fan is plugged in. The channel fan is, you know, the pins for it are inconveniently placed right below where this graphics card sits. So I can't have the graphics card in the number 1 PCI Express slot because then it doesn't give me clearance to this PCI from a network card, so I had to move it down here. And then, you know, I got a couple of fan plugins down below this, so this barely clears it. It's a very tight squeeze, and you can see the fan, it barely has clearance from a network card up here. By the way, this is an Intel Centrino wireless network card. It's very nice, actually. Maybe I'll do a review on it later, but I took a gamble with it. I didn't know what to expect. Worked out very nicely though. Completely satisfied. So now, as you can see, I've got this all hooked up down here. So I've got this cooling fan here, and let's fire it up. If I can find the power button. Oh yeah. For safety, I unplugged the power cord and I turned off the power switch, so I gotta fix those 2 things. And then also, obviously, I had to disconnect my DVI cable from my graphics card in order to remove it. So let me just plug this back in. secure it right quick. That's strange. This graphics card, it has an HDMI output, but my motherboard actually somehow doesn't support HDMI, so I have to use DVI, but that's okay because it still works. Alright, now everything's switched on, plugged in. Let's fire this puppy up. And it's working. Nothing else, it's definitely spinning. See if I can get a close up here. Everything is working as expected. So hopefully I get something on my monitor. Nothing yet. Oh, I know why. It's because I don't have the stupid power cable in there. Alright, so my dumbass was wondering why my monitor wasn't coming on. Turns out I didn't have the power jack plugged in to the graphics card, so it couldn't do anything. But now that I got it all working, everything's good to go. The fan's spinning, everything's all nice and pretty in there. So that's that. I'm happy with it. Alrighty, tonight for this episode we're going to be reviewing Schlafly Hefeweizen. This is an unfiltered wheat beer. I love Hefeweizens. They're usually really smooth, really tasty, flavorful kind of beers. So, as always, we're going to be drinking from clean glassware. And I gotta open this. Here we go. Trusty bottle opener here. So Schlafly is, I guess, originally a St. Louis brewing company, and they've kind of spread throughout the nation. I actually know Dr. Schlafly. He's the Schlafly guy's cousin. He's a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon. So Schlafly, I like a lot of Schlafly beers. They have their Bottle Works, which is like it's a small-time brewery slash restaurant in Maplewood, which is a little, I guess, sub-city of St. Louis. And then they've got the Schlafly Tap House. Anyway, we're going to review this beer, Schlafly Hefeweizen. So as you pour it, you see it's got a nice golden yellow color to it. It's a very light colored beer. Lots of bubbles rising up, but it's sort of thin. It doesn't have a lot of foam retention. So I'm expecting this to be very smooth and not very thick, not very creamy, but you know, nice and smooth and easy to the palate. So going for the waft, and it's got that nice little sting to it, almost citrusy kind of scent, aroma. Now we'll go in for the taste. It is a very smooth beer. You know, it flows nicely. The texture of it, it's not creamy at all. It's very, as far as the texture, it's very watery. It's very smooth. The flavor, it's got, let's see. It's got a nice tangy, like citrusy flavor to it. It doesn't taste, you know, there's not an intense hoppy flavor. Obviously, because it's a wheat beer, so there's no hops. Anyway, My brain is somewhere else today. It's a very citrusy flavor to it. You know, it's kind of gives you a sting, but it's like a good sting. It's like a tangy, citrusy kind of sting. And then it finishes off pretty clean. You know, there's not much lingering. It's not really bitter or anything. So overall, I mean, I knew I liked this beer because I've had it before. But as far as the overall review, you know, the color doesn't really matter when you're drinking a beer. For me, what matters is the thickness, you know, the creaminess. I like my beers to be not so creamy, but more watery and smooth flowing. And as far as the taste, it really just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. This particular one, it's very, very smooth. Like, if you're a fan of lagers, you would enjoy this beer. You know, if you don't like something with a in-your-face attitude, you'd enjoy this. So, you know, it's very, very easy, very smooth, and very pleasing overall. So that's that. That's my beer review on Schlafly Hefeweizen. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again.